Welcome to another edition, November playoff edition of the PA High School Football Report. Eric Epler of PennLive and the Patriot News alongside colleague Dan Sostek. Lots to get to, lots to look forward to, but first, a check-in on my Pitt alum and co-host. Dan, how was your weekend?
We don't have to talk about my alma mater. It's been a rough 2 weeks. Um, some weird officiating, but when you lose to Virginia, you don't really get to complain about the officiating. But besides that, it was a good weekend. Nice weather.
Yeah.
Got to walk outside a little bit. Got down to Penn Manor for some girls soccer. That Penn Manor is a lovely part of Lancaster. It's a real gorgeous part of the countryside down there. So it was a nice afternoon there, and yeah, now we're ready for some more football. I'm almost done with the fall, which is crazy. It feels like it's gone super quick.
It is crazy. We are less than a month from the complete end of the fall sports season. Of course, soccer and field hockey will be done in a matter of days by the end of this weekend. And yeah, then only things left then is football. But we will get to that. So let's begin with a quick recap, Dan, of our Week 12 assignments. We'll start with you, bud. Where were you hunkered down on Friday night?
I was in scenic. I was in Lancaster on Friday too. I was in Donegal. First time at that. That's a nice football
It
facility
is.
they
It's
have
very
there.
nice. Yes.
Yeah. They were telling me about it. That there were some funding things and some stuff is a little smaller than they'd like and things. But all in all, it's a very nice facility. First time down there. Got to see Steel-High Lancaster Catholic, and man, what
Woo.
a performance by the Rollers! Like that, it was dominant from whistle to whistle. I don't know if I have the numbers in front of me, but I think yeah, it was just a complete one-sided affair where Lancaster Catholic could not move the ball on that Steel High defense, which I think was kind of the bigger surprise than the fact that Steel High could move the ball so well on Lancaster. Steel High, it was a big performance by Nazir Fuller, 3 touchdowns, including a pick six. And then Jay Sean George with 2 scores as well. It feels like it's different people every week for this Steel High team. They
Yep.
just are piecing together ways to score on offense, and then the defense is just playing its tail off every week. I mean, I talked with Coach Andrew Irby after the game, and he's won a lot at Steel High. He's won a lot, but he said this district championship, the 5th straight, this one was special because you know they really had to get it out of the mud, and they did it in a year where you know they lost a lot of talent, and then in the offseason they suffered some tragedies in the
Yep.
community too. And for them to come together with a really young group, a really inexperienced group in a class above where they were last year and win another district title, just one of the best coaching jobs in the area this year.
Yeah. We said this for years and years, and I've been around a lot longer than you have, obviously, judging from the gray hair. But Steelton really is a sports town. It's a sports borough, and to have this kind of success this year after seeing, I don't know, I think it was close to 15 seniors who had all played together and had that unbelievable 3 PIAA titles in 4 years, 4 straight district titles. You figured, okay, high school football is cyclical. Every couple of years you have maybe you have a special class. That class was beyond special, if that's a thing. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Maybe, I don't know, 50 some wins in 4 years was just ridiculous. And so now to come back being bumped up to 2A because of the success of that senior class that walked away, I don't know if people. I mean, we expect them to be a contender in 2A because obviously it's a different set of you know um, it's a different level, but it's also sort of a quicker path to a district title. But to be at this point 10-2 and putting that sort of smackdown on a team that I thought would compete with them in Lancaster Catholic is pretty darn impressive. So we'll talk a little bit more about the Rollers moving on here in a little bit. All right, on Friday, Dan, I had the great pleasure of rolling into one of my favorite venues in the Mid-Penn Conference. In fact, it may be my favorite venue. to watch a football game, and that is John H. Frederick Field.
Oh
I
yeah.
love I love the fact that it's behind the community pool. I love the fact that there's trees around it. I love the fact that there's a train that occasionally goes like literally within 30 feet of the home stands
Do you love the
behind it.
fact that there's no parking?
There's no parking, but uh, the good folks in Mechanics will always park me in the woods right behind the
Yeah.
home stands.
Yeah, you kind of have to beg, but
A little bit, but they do take care of us there. I do have to apologize to Tim Gross, the Carlisle Sentinel. Apparently, I took his spot in the press box. Well, I did because it had a piece of paper that said Media Sentinel, and I sat down anyway. So Tim had to go to the other side of the field and
oof.
sit in the other press box. So I do have to publicly apologize to Tim for that snafu. Anyway, it was just another inspired week for Mechanicsburg, who downed Cocalico. This is a Cocalico team that won the last two District 3 5A titles. I mean,
Yep.
and a 42-3 victory, by all counts, a surprising margin of victory for me anyway, even though we've come to expect Mechanicsburg, being undefeated, scoring a lot of points. This version of Wildcats was really off the chain on Friday. The atmosphere, Dan, best I've seen all season. Best I've been a part of all season. So this wave of success, if you will, is obviously being embraced by the entire Mechanicsburg community. That included Poison frontman Brett Michaels,
Was he
who
at the game?
apparently was watching the school's live stream. He retweeted it, and the live stream went bananas.
Wow.
I think at one point there was close to 5,000 people on the live stream.
That is now that is and he's he's a flat out alum, right?
Yeah, he yes, grew up Mechanicsburg. I think he was born in Pittsburgh. Don't Brett Michaels fans, please don't torture me. But I think he was born in Pittsburgh, but he spent most of his teenage years in Mechanicsburg. Went to Mechanicsburg High,
Mhm.
and has really championed the area ever since. He's been phenomenal for the area. Great dude all around. And Cocalico the Veer had no chance of breaking the Cats on this night. Usual suspects, Dan, we talked a lot about Justin Bardo, Colin Stair, whom I forget, Jimmy Dwyer, Willie Marshall Travis, excuse me. That they were terrific up front in really shutting down that running game. And Eli Reeder, the quarterback from Mechanicsburg, 5 total touchdowns in this one, 2 TD passes to Noah Apple, who had 2 great third quarter grabs for TDs, both 29 yards. Tremendous effort. And before we move on, the return of running back Isaac Dolman to the lineup just elevated everything that much more.
Mhm.
Obviously most know by now that he suffered a tragic loss of his father just a couple weeks ago. But his return, he had a 51-yard touchdown run, which was just dynamic. The place was electric. It really was. So congrats to Mechanicsburg for moving on to the semifinal round. And again, we'll talk more about the Mechanicsburg Wildcats in a bit. Saturday, Dan, just real quick, Harrisburg really did a number on York Adams rep Dallastown.
Yeah, I thought
Uh,
that game was gonna be a little closer.
yeah, interesting. Speaking of what you just said, interestingly enough, I was talking with Coach Cal, Harrisburg head coach Calvin Everett, after the game, and we were chatting off the record, for a few minutes before he went into the field house, and he actually said to me, "Ep, did that surprise you?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. The margin surprised me. I mean, 42-6 was the final score, and the 6 came with 1:30 left in the game and a running clock. So yeah." I mean, just these guys, these guys remind me. Harrisburg reminds me of the Hulk. You know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
they enter the field in the playoffs and just get angry, turn green, and just start mashing things. Messiah Mickens was really, really good on both sides of the ball. It was his hit sort of that hurt. Cody Kistner got hurt in this game midway through the second quarter, and Harrisburg went off on a 27-point detonation in the second quarter, which put this game away. But losing Kistner obviously hurt, but it would not have changed the outcome one bit. There were just so many electric plays in this game. One of them was an Elias Koch punt return where he ran 25 yards. He wiggled through a couple tackles, and they just decided to jump and lateral to Quincy Brannon, who was right there in perfect position to run on the final play of the second quarter for a 60-yard punt return. I talked to both. I talked to Brandon. He said yes, they worked on that play because I asked him if they drew that up in the sand a couple minutes before it happened. He said no, we actually worked that. We actually worked on that. So okay, I believe him. But dominating performance by Harrisburg in the quarterfinals, and they keep moving on. So
Yep.
congrats to those guys.
Yeah, round sounds. I mean, they're always playing their best football at the end of the year. It feels like it.
Always.
Yeah, and you were worried about that a little bit after the Cumberland Valley loss. Um, Seems like they've completely recentered and are feeling pretty good again. So
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right, so let's turn our attention, Dan, to a couple of Week 13 matchups. 16 teams now remain in each classification. We're in the round of 16, but some teams are obviously still in districts like 3. So 1 month remains in the 24 high school football season. They had 2 district titles have already been handed out. DeLone Catholic wins 1A. You mentioned Steel-High's dominating performance against Lancaster Catholic. That grabbed the 2A. Steel-High's first 2A championship. You mentioned 5 straight. The last 4, previous 4 were single A. So let's take a look at another championship to be won coming up with the top 2 seeds in District 3 3A. Bermudian Springs and Trinity, they will collide Friday night, 7 p.m. at Boiling Springs High School. What do you think?
it's a really interesting matchup. We were kind of talking about this before we hopped on here. Um, just this Trinity team so hard to gauge because you're still, no matter how much you try to not be anchored in your preseason expectations, no one really expected them to be here at this point, and so you kind of almost treat them like a Cinderella team. But if you just look at what they put on paper, and you look at what they've done this year, they're not a Cinderella team. They've just been one of the best teams in 3A all year. Um, Christian Joy's been one of the best running backs in the district. The defense has been awesome with guys like Jacob Ness anchoring it. They have some freshman players, linebackers as well, playing really well. Emil Way, one of the best 2-way guys in the league as well. Um, so you just have to treat them like they're the contender that they are. But man, this Bermudian Springs team's an interesting matchup too because they have a lot of ways they can beat you on offense. Right? They've got a quarterback that throw the Blaine Hubbard with
Yep.
19 touchdowns and 4 picks on the year. And then they've got a couple running backs. Eddie Seabright with 985 rushing yards on the season this year to lead the team with 15 touchdowns. And then just a stable of wide receivers. They can attack you in a lot of different ways. I believe they're 10-1 now on the year. I'm really fascinated by this matchup just because it does feel like a true pick 'em in the sense that it feels like these are 2 teams that are have been kind of waiting to get at each other all year.
Yeah, this is a tough call for me. I mean, from time to time, I use the word grit, and I think both teams had qualify for that description. I really do. And you mentioned all the reasons why we, thought Trinity might not get to this point, but the grit that they've shown to get here, and you mentioned a couple of guys too. Just we always mention the big 3. There's always the big 3. I did a story on the big 3 early in the year, and that's Christian Joy, Jacob Ness, and Emil Way. They were sort of the architects of holding this franchise, if you will, together after a lot of people, a lot of players, and strong football players sort of defected. And a year in transition with Kevin Yarnovich coming in to take over for Jordan Hill, who coached for 3 years and then moved on to a position at Penn State University with James Franklin. So, a lot of things were happening in the offseason to sort of make you wonder if Trinity could get here. But that grit has been there all season, and it's been impressive. It's been very impressive. So how do you find something that says, hey, Bermudian Springs, even though sitting here 10-1, and you mentioned a couple of their key players, another guy's Jack Gouch. Gouch is like Trinity, is like Joy is to Trinity. Just kind of a jack of all trades. You can put him anywhere. He's going to be successful. So he's a tough assignment for the Shamrocks on Friday night. So I agree with you. I think this is a true pick'em game. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. at this point, but it should be one hell of a game.
Yeah, and I
That's all.
forgot that I'd seen this Bermudian Springs team last year go up against West Perry, and West Perry kind of took it to them. But it's a group that definitely has had some playoff experience too. Is kind of ready. You know, they put 21 points on that West Perry team last year, which is a pretty good team. So I've a lot of the same similar players. I know Eddie Seabright had a big game in that game. So
Yeah,
they're they're
they're a team too that just seems like it almost seems like it's time for them to get over that hump.
yep.
It almost seems like this is the right mix of offense and defense. This is the right time for them to get over the hump. Problem is Trinity's in the way, who's equally effective. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on this one for a little bit more before I make a prediction. All right, Dan, let's move on to a District 3 5A semifinal. We talked Mechanicsburg early. They now still 11-0, undefeated, and as a 2 seed, they will now host Bishop McDevitt, the 6 seed. Crusaders 10-2. This is back at Frederick Field on Friday night, 7 p.m. The atmosphere here, if it was electric for my game against Cocalico, I expect it to be standing room only when the Crusaders come to town. Does this wave continue for the Wildcats?
I mean, this has been a matchup that I think we've all been talking about. What if this happened? Like you're not rooting for matchups, but you did kind of want to see these two teams kind of square off because I mean, Mechanicsburg has kind of played the way McDevitt has typically played throughout the regular season, right? Especially being in that division, they're just kind of running through every regular season opponent and just keep running through in the playoffs. And McDevitt has kind of had to battle a little bit to kind of get to this point, right? And it looks like McDevitt is better off for that, right? That Conrad
Yes.
Weiser win was probably, the best they've looked all year, I think. Considering the opponent. You could say maybe the State College went on it. The loss was kind of the turning point there. But this is such a fascinating matchup because I think that no matter what, McDevitt's the lower seed. Yeah, McDevitt's on the road. Yeah, this is a game Mechanicsburg is going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, right? Because I don't think anybody outside of the area is going to be looking at that matchup and saying they think that Mechanicsburg's going to win. I think people are, McDevitt is the brand name, right? They're the team with all the Division One talent. They're the team with, huge depth and everything. They're the team that's won the state championship recently. Mechanicsburg is going to come in there feeling like they have to prove everyone wrong. I think, and I think that's the way they have to approach it. And McDevitt, I think, is going to kind of try to play a similar card, right? That they're the lower seed, they're coming on the road. Maybe listen to this podcast and hear me say about how impressive Mechanicsburg has been all year. But I really just am so fascinated to see this play out because it's like one of those matchups that you really just don't know how the chess pieces are going to look in comparison to each other until you put them on the board.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that I thought about, with the exception of Eddie Corkery from State College, this is going to be the best quarterback McDevitt has faced all season. That's the kind of skill and confidence I think Eli Reeder brings to the field. I saw it Friday. You've seen it all year long. I, I thoroughly believe he sets the control dial for Mechanicsburg for all of it. Of course, Josh Smith, not to dismiss what Josh Smith has done. He's no stranger to causing chaos for defenses, and offenses, really. But for me, it's just what kind of pressure can those four front men I mentioned earlier about Mechanicsburg, Marshall Travis and Stair and Bardo and these guys. What kind of pressure can they get on Stone Saunders? Because obviously, if Saunders is going to have an extra second or two to throw, this could be a long day for Mechanicsburg. So they've got to provide that sort of just nasty edge that they had all season. On the flip side, McDevitt's offensive line, I believe, has been undervalued the second half of the season. I think they've improved dramatically
They
in
figured
the
out the
last
running game.
in the last 5 or 6 weeks. You've seen that with the running game. And obviously there's multiple things to learn when you're dealing with McDevitt's offense. So there's different blocking schemes, there's different assignments to do. So I think it takes some time to get to get in that space if you're an offensive lineman. And remember, this is a fairly new offensive line for McDevitt. There's a couple guys, obviously, some veterans that have some experience. But, frankly, those guys don't get enough credit. I told some curious fans on Friday night that it's just a different monster when you're dealing with McDevitt. Everything is sped up. There's going to be a huge uptick. And I'm not sure, stopping Cocalico the way they did, but yes, dominating performance. But I'm not sure that helped Mechanicsburg very much to prepare for McDevitt. It's just going to be faster. Your energy level can't dip, not even for a single play, because this is an offense that can hurt you really, really quick. That said, Mechanicsburg's got more than a puncher's chance in this. I was very impressed overall with how they handled themselves. They played clean football. It was disciplined. I think they only had a couple penalties, and one was suspect. But can you see Mechanicsburg lasting or basically outlasting what McDevitt has to offer for 48 minutes? I'm not so sure that can happen. But we'll certainly find out. Do you have a pick, or do you want to wait?
I have to go. I think I got to go McDevitt. I think if they weren't playing as well as they've been playing the past few weeks, especially offensively. I mean, I know it's weird to say that coming off a lot when they lost to State College, but I think that was a really good loss for them where they basically I think they played really well in that game. You were there.
They did. They
Yeah.
played their best that I've seen them. They played their best game in that loss.
Yeah. If this was coming off, the Altoona performance, which was pretty, listless, and some other the Chamberlain game, which you kind of left a little room for improvement, be one thing. But when they're firing all cylinders, I think they are still, the class of 5A, despite what the seeding says. I don't like writing off a Mechanicsburg team though that has blown out every team they played, and
Absolutely
it
not.
feels really
Absolutely.
bad to do that. So it's not a confident pick at all. But I think I think I'd probably go McDevitt by a score, by possession or something like that.
I think that's fair. Absolutely think that's fair. All right, another Friday night clash. This is a 3-6A semifinal. We talked Cougars earlier. Harrisburg now travels to Neffsville at Crew Stadium to face Manheim Township, the top seed. As you know, Manheim Township had a barn burner with Cumberland Valley. I don't know if that surprised a ton of people, but the fact that Cumberland Valley had a chance to win down the stretch, it's something you gotta get over and just say, hey, listen, we got through at this point. A win's a win. Doesn't matter if it looks great. But obviously with Harrisburg coming to town, Manheim Township's gotta be better.
Yeah. And quick mention in Cumberland Valley, quick shout out to Brady Hockenberry. Just wrote a story about him. He played the final 3 games of the season. He's a 5'7", 160-pound
Yep.
linebacker who led the team in tackles this year. Played the final 3 games of the year with a torn ACL. That kid's he told me, he said he's not playing football in college, so he's like, I'm going out. I don't care. Don't care what extra damage I do to my knee if I do anything. I'm playing these last games. And I think he had 10 tackles in each of the last 3 games and a fumble recovery. Like the stuff Josh always telling me about this kid is, that how much he meant to that program. So quick shout out to him for that performance in that game, because clearly the defense came to play against Manheim.
Yes.
But man, kind of what I was saying about McDevitt's kind of the opposite with Manheim, right? Where you don't want to say limping, but they don't look like the team they looked like earlier in the year, and we haven't been covering them in person, so maybe there's some smoke and mirrors here. Maybe there's things that can kind of explain the dip a little bit, but the loss to Wilson and then the game against Cumberland Valley, which CV played their tails off, but I think Manheim probably should win that game by a little more than 7 points if they expect to be able to beat Harrisburg. I don't know. I think that it's another one of those matchups where it kind of feels like one team is going in one direction, and you kind of like to play that the direction of the arrow, right? And kind of feel like Harrisburg's got the upward trajectory. Doesn't sound like Kevin Brown will be back this week. We'll find out officially closer, but he's getting close. And when you kind of hear that as a team too, that probably powers up Harrisburg a little bit, knowing like we just get one more game, we get the best offensive lineman in the state back. And then all of a sudden you start feeling confident, seeing St. Joe's Prep is beatable, seeing the state college team on the horizon that you've already beat this year. I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup because it's a Mannheim team that is a lot more run heavy than they've been in the past. And when Mannheim has typically or given Harrisburg issues in the last few years, it's been because Hayden Johnson was there to kind of dice up the defense a little bit. I don't know if Mannheim can do that this year. I think they're going to have to win on the ground, and that's a tough task against any Harrisburg defense.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm still piecing this one together too, and I'm right with you where it just feels like Harrisburg has this momentum generated, and Mannheim has to somehow either get healthy or you know what I mean, like kind of at this point, yes, they had the bye week, so they should be a little bit rested, but when you're going up against a Commonwealth team and it takes a little while to get right again, But if you're Manheim Township too, you're gonna either advance or go out, giving it to Declan Clancy. I mean, he's gonna get every opportunity to get the ball. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 30 touches in this game, because that's their bread and butter. Defensively, you probably load up. You probably say to yourself, we're gonna make the passing game beat us. I'm not sure that's great because I've seen Jayon Lewis throw, progress through the season, and become a pretty good passer. And I think he gets a lot of credit for the success that Harrisburg, or he should get a lot of credit for the success that Harrisburg has had. Basically, with a situation that he was dealt. Most people forget he was practicing as a wide receiver until early August. As everybody waited the Sean Lee Jr. Decision by the PIAA. So yeah, I just this is going to be just one of those tense down to the wire games. I think it's I'm trying to figure out what can turn this momentum late, but I see a very similar game to what Mannheim went against Cumberland Valley. I just think it's going to play out something like that, 21-20 or something. It's going to be a heck of a ball game. So I'll wait till the picks come out to predict on this one.
Yeah.
All right. So one PIAA game we're going to talk about before we get out of here, Dan, and that's the Steel-High Rollers. Surprise! Another district title for the Rollers, and now the prize is you go way out to Claysburg Kimmel High School, which I think is near the Canadian border, to play Bedford, District 5 rep. Friday, 7:00. What do you see here?
I mean, it's the Steel-High team is just, again, they're this team that just kind of spins a wheel and figures out who's going to be the focal point of the offense. It could be any of those weapons. And Ymir Caesar's done a really good job stabilizing that quarterback position. Does a great job on those pop passes and made a nice throw to Nazir Fuller later. But they've got so many backs. They've got Jim Evans, Jerome Ross, Jay Sean George.
Yep.
They have all these guys that can take the ball and go anywhere with it. But it's the defense, I think, that's going to be kind of the deciding factor in this game. And I think they're going to need a big game from Angel Luciano to keep Bedford quarterback Quincy Swaim kind of contained. He's a quarterback by name. He's thrown for 792 yards and 6 touchdowns this year, but what he does is on the ground, 1,637 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns this year for him. And then they also have a receiver, Owen Tedrow, who's been pretty good this year, but they're going to need Luciano to basically, I imagine it's going to be, hey, Angel, your job is to track where Swaim is going and just run him down like every single play, because you just can't let a guy like that beach his 7 yards to carry, 19 touchdowns on the year. The reason Steel High won that game against Lancaster Catholic so easily was because they con- they Lancaster Catholic couldn't move the ball. Um, I think if you get into these closer games late, this is kind of when the inexperience might show up a little bit more. If you build that cushion, that's what really helps, I think, these younger teams in these playoff games. So it's a fascinating matchup. I think you're going to be there in bordering on Toronto or wherever. So you'll have some fun down in Claysburg.
Yeah, it's going to be cold out there. It's going to
Yeah.
be cold out there. But yeah, Kevin Steele has a nice squad. I mean, the loss to Chestnut Ridge looks surprising now. But 9-3 with setbacks to undefeated and ranked Penn Cambria and undefeated and ranked Clearfield. That's solid work. That's solid work by the Bison. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Andrew Irby puts a spy on Swaim. That would be my guess. He's a guy that obviously he pilots everything for the Bison, and to me, it feels like if Steel High can get off to a fast start here, they can sort of pin their ears back a little bit and really get after Swaim, who's an all-state caliber kid and a really good dual threat quarterback. But I think in the long run, I think Steel High, it's postseason, it's state playoff time, and I think this is a really good business trip for them again. So I will take the Rollers in this one for sure. All right, Dan. Well, that'll do it for this playoff edition of the PA High School Football Report. Remember, we'll have previews for all games involving Mid-Penn teams. That includes PIAA showdowns, State College versus Williamsport in 6A, and, of course, Juniata versus Shamokin in 4A. It's going to be a tough battle for the Indians for sure. Over the next few days on PennLive.com, so check all those out. State rankings are updated now. And Dan and I get a chance to take in a little soccer and a little field hockey tonight, so that's a good thing. It's a good time to follow along, champion all these athletes working in state playoffs and district playoffs. So we'll talk again next week.